what is up, everyone? It is your host, or not host, I guess, filling in host, Brando, back for another episode here with my boy Drew of the Vols ATB podcast. Obviously, a huge episode to cover, lots of grounds to cover, lots of topics. But first off, Alex and Lo are not here today. Just want to give some prayers to our boy, little Alex, in Tampa, Florida. Currently going through the little Hurricane Ian, kind of making landfall out there. So I just want to give some thoughts and prayers to Alex and also to the people in the state of Florida. Obviously looking really dangerous, looking pretty bad. Hurricanes are never good. And I know we just had a huge rivalry game, but thoughts and prayers to everyone and hope they stay safe. The last week, Drew, how you been, my guy? I know we've been riding high. A lot to discuss.
Man, unbelievable. I mean, there are so many things that we can go and discuss, and I'm sure we will. But everything from the atmosphere, the build-up, just the vibe around campus, the game itself, even the after party, just unbelievable. That's what – I mean, weekends like last weekend's what it's all about being a Tennessee fan. And, I mean, I've never experienced anything like that in my life, so I'm excited for what this season has for tail. But, dude, what a weekend. Unbelievable. I think I finally recovered after Saturday from this game, but my God, unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree, man. It was like a 3-day recovery for me too. But I mean, like, bro, we said it couldn't be done. We talked about this game, since the beginning of the podcast when us four all got together. We talked about looking forward to this year. It was that Florida game, and I was thinking, can we get this done in year 2 under Josh Heupel? Can we get over that hump early and get a meaningful win? Sure enough, did, man. Getting out there at 9:30, seeing College Game Day, the whole set. I know people were out there camping out. I mean, people were out there giving them hell at 6 a.m. It was wild. The signs I was seeing were just, vulgar, but, obviously Tennessee, we did it big, we showed them why they shouldn't have went to Duke and Kansas. I feel like you can't beat what you saw on Saturday morning. Everyone picking Tennessee, but Herb Street, that was kind of cool. All in all, man, the environment, Checker Neyland was full before, 30 minutes before kickoff. All the tailgates from G5 was fired at G10 with the gang down there. Everyone, getting the energy. You could just tell the big game feeling was in the air. The team went out there, performed well. You can't even explain how well they did, man. I guess we could dive in first offensively, like Hendon Hooker, man. Can we talk about this being this man's best performance yet as a Tennessee Vol? I think the Heisman Hooker, the Heisman with a 5 is the S Hooker. I think that candidate, it's growing some steam, and you're seeing it from the national media too, Drew.
Oh, yeah. After Saturday, I've come to the conclusion, at least in my lifetime, 24 years as a Tennessee fan, he's the best quarterback I've ever seen play in the orange and white. I mean, and for me, I think he's way better of a quarterback than Josh Dobbs is, just as far as he's just a threat with his legs. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, he was the complete sole reason why we won that game on Saturday. Going 22 for 28 with 349 passing yards and 2 TDs. On top of that, 112 rushing yards and a touchdown. Most passing yards by a Tennessee quarterback against Florida since the Peyton Manning himself back in 97. And, I mean, just even the offense in general, I mean, it was just unbelievable. 576 yards of total offense. And the huge thing that once I sobered up, I didn't realize that was actually the case, was that we didn't punt once the entire game,
exactly.
Which was I couldn't even think about that while the game was happening. I was a little more too focused on heckling the Florida fans who are right below me, but literally didn't punt once the entire game, which I thought was an unbelievable stat. And even despite the effort from Anthony Richardson, and I try to tell you, man, Anthony Richardson, He's a hell of an athlete, dude. I mean, he looked like trash the first year part of the season, but there's a reason why a lot of people still thought, he could be a good quarterback. He proved it last Saturday. But, man, Hooker for Heisman immediately starts today. Vols ATB Group is going to start that campaign. We're all about it.
Sure.
I think he's the best shot at winning the Heisman out of any Tennessee quarterback. I truly believe that.
Yeah, man. I mean, first off, last week the special teams route, worrying about our punt game, getting the ball off with the blocked punts and all the troubles. That didn't matter this week. The Vols staying off the field, Paxton Brooks having a free day. And that's the second time it's happened this season. I think the third time under Josh Heupel, where, our punters aren't even going out in there and having to punt. That goes with the aggressive mindset and just the overall offense and tempo and how successful we could be. But, Hendon Hooker, man, like you said, 22 of 28, his rushing, leading the team in rushing as well. And then that big chunk in the passing game, it came with different receivers. Let's not forget Cedric Tillman out this week. Brew McCoy finally comes alive on a 70-yard bomb that, made Neyland erupt, then getting his first touchdown in the orange and white. Then you had another guy, Ramel Keaton, taking in, Cedric Tillman's spot on that huge bomb and on a lot of balls. It was just, great to see that overall, the fact of, being able to talk about our wide receiver group being the best wide receiver core in the SEC. You saw Jalen Hyatt, Ramel Keaton, Brew McCoy, Jimmy Callaway, and some other guys getting involved early, man. And that was, super great to see when the run game wasn't going off. And then I know our defense, later in the game struggled a lot, but early on, man, that rush defense, besides Anthony Richardson doing what he does best, I feel like overall stopping the running backs, like that was the key part of the game in that game. Seeing the defensive line, I think it was our best defensive line performance in, all year, maybe better than Pitt. Late in the game, the edge rushers really weren't there early, but, Byron Young really was the reason we won that game on the last play of the game. And, seeing him and Tyler Barron, take that leadership role when the game mattered most, I thought that was huge for, getting us the win. So all in all, man, there's so many things to even dive into. But I think, Hendon Hooker, Byron Young, and the defensive line, that's really what, led us to victory.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that was the one thing that a lot of us were worried about around this time last week, was that when we knew that, like, Tillman was more than likely not going to play. I mean, so what I was trying to tell you guys, I mean, like, this is the most talented depth of wide receivers I think Tennessee's had in a very long time. And, I mean, it was a show-out day for not only Brew, but, man, Ramel Keaton as well. I mean, talk about how huge a grab that was at the end of the first half from that 60-yard bomb from Hooker within our own, within our own 10 or 15-yard line. I mean, and I think it just speaks volumes to what they, Heupel and his group has been able to develop these guys into solid, reliable, wideouts, because that would have not been the case, I feel like, even 2 or 3 years ago. So just huge. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, even though we were 10-point favorites going into the game, still a huge win over Florida. But as we'll talk about later, a lot of things we got to correct up, and especially towards next week, going towards LSU, especially starting off with defense. I'd love to hear your input on this, but I kind of thought our front seven was actually pretty damn good, like in the sense of putting pressure on Anthony Richardson and forcing him out and use his legs. Yeah. And I mean, we only held him to 97 yards, I believe, of rushing yards total. But my God, man, I've never thought I would ever say this in a million years, but when the hell is Warren Burrell coming back? Because
oh my God,
our DBs are dreadful, dude. I mean, we allowed 453 passing yards to Anthony Richardson. Like if someone told us that last week's show, Anthony Richardson's going to throw over 450 yards against Tennessee and be the sole reason keep Florida in the game, everyone, all four of us, would have been laughing our asses off about it. So there is, that's an extremely concerning area that we have to fix on, especially if we're going to want to go 10-2 this year, because Will Levis, in my opinion, is still a much better quarterback than Anthony Richardson is. And Bryce Young and Stetson Bennett will just tear this defense to shreds if we, continue to have performances like that. But love to hear your thoughts on that, Brando.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I never thought we'd say, after everything, been not trying to say his name on the show, the first time we're going to say it, bring back Warren Burrell. Like, I want Warren Burrell healthy. And it's kind of crazy because none of us even knew that he was really injured. Like, that was like never one of the big injuries when it was the running back room being banged up, or, the wide receivers with Cedric Tillman. Like, no one ever mentioned Warren Burrell. But apparently it came all the way back in the overtime in Pitt, the first series of that game. Like, apparently a receiver landed on top of him, maybe like a lower level extremity. So who really knows what's going on there? But, man, like, I understand why they put him out there at first. Obviously, still lacking D. Williams, who's just now fully getting healthy. It sounds like he's going to make an impact in the backfield and also punt returns whenever he's healthy for LSU. So that'll be a big body just to see what's going to happen with him on the other side of Christian Charles. I definitely think you see guys like Brandon Turridge, Kamal Hayden, like, he came in clutch with the interception, but it was probably his worst game in the orange and white, even though he did have like some game-changing plays. Like, even though he's having his worst game, like, he was stepping up. And I think that's one of our biggest additions, Juco into the Heupel defense there. Like, Kamal Hayden's really living up to the hype and embracing the team. I definitely think we'd need that veteran mindset back. I know Jalen McCullough's back there, but I understand why they did it. When we go to face these other teams, like going to play at LSU, you have Keyshawn Butte long, athletic wide receivers. When you play Alabama, I know their receiving core is not what it's been like, but, guys on Bama, Georgia, LSU, like these are going to be really big tests for our defense to see how they come out. I know against Pitt, they were locked down and, had game-changing plays. We need those kinds of performances going into Baton Rouge and, Athens later in the year.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. I think it's just one of those things. I was listening to Josh and Swain today, and I kind of agree with Jason Swain a little bit in the sense where, when it comes to Tim Banks, I know a lot of people, and I heard a lot of people in the stands that were getting pissed off about our defense, about Tim Banks and everything. But honestly, though, Tim Banks isn't the issue. I mean, I feel like the schemes that they had and everything, the zone defense that they were playing was relatively the right calls and everything. And because we were getting to Richardson and we were stopping their run game. I mean, we literally forced Anthony Richardson to use his arm to win the game. And my God, he nearly did. But I mean, the wideouts were getting so wide open. And I think it's just because of the talent difference between Florida's wideouts, which arguably are probably, fourth, fifth, sixth, maybe best as far as talent goes in the SEC. Tennessee definitely has at least top two as far as best wideouts go. But if Florida's wideouts are getting that open that quick, then my God, I'm very nervous about next Saturday on how open LSU is going to get, because LSU's got one of the best with Keyshawn Butte, one of the best in the country. So
exactly. I think it comes, with obviously the Tim Banks defense, having to play with our tempo guys being on the field a lot. The defense is on there a lot. Obviously the defensive back, lack of depth, where we're at, you have your veterans, but, still kind of getting, Christian Charles' feet wet. Brandon Turner still has to make that next level push. Still trying to get guys like Wesley Walker and Andre Turrentine playing to their full potential. Shout out to all the guys like, Trayvon Flowers. He's a true leader for this team, but, we've seen time and time again from Pitt. And this past week, he's getting out physically punished by wide receivers and, tight ends in physical play. But he is that leader still on defense, also making big plays. But, to get ran over like that, that's, concerning to see. I think obviously you have to, point to next year's recruiting class, 2023. You got Jordan Matthews, Christian Conyers, Ricky Gibson in the safety position, John Slaughter, Jack Luttrell. And those bodies are going to come. Obviously, this defense, the corners, they have to go out there and make more plays in their one-on-one coverage. I think, this defense is kind of built to go off our offense and play at a Big 12 kind of defensive pace where your edge rushers are supposed to be dominant. You want your corners to make that plays and hop in front of balls, be locked down in defense and stop teams from getting big plays. But whenever we give up those short plays, you can't lie, those gaps were wide open. Seeing it up there in KK, you could literally see just throwing it across the middle to Ricky Pascal or, freshman. It was just number one, especially, and I think number three, those outside quick balls. That's what Pitt did, getting the screens out there. That's what, Ball State and Akron, they, whenever they threw the ball quick, they were trying to get it out quick. And I think that's kind of a flaw with our defense. Bama and Georgia, like we said, when they throw it out there quick, they're going to make those cuts and make the big plays with that talent that they have. And, you have to get on it quick. I think you have to get better at the tackle for loss. I know it's one of our best traits for defense, but, hitting someone behind the line and getting those big, plays for loss early is what's going to set up this defense. But, man, our third down defense, I think it was 7 for 15. I think Florida was 100% on fourth downs. Was absolutely crazy.
They were
So it's still crazy, a crazy percentage. And then they could have easily, kicked the field goal, not went for two, just kicked the extra point, and then, been set up for a field goal to take the game into overtime. But that's just, I think, Billy Napier kind of knowing where his team was at currently right now and saying that if I'm going to go out here and win this game, I got to, play against this offensive tempo, because I think mid-game you saw Billy Napier say, I have to be able to keep up. I have to change my whole game plan to keep up with this team. And, going out there and trying to win the whole game kind of backfired on him. I think, obviously, you take that to overtime, you have no idea where that game turns. But, Tennessee got the W, and that's kind of all that matters. But I think that was a coaching malpractice on their part.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I think you could also make the same argument towards Josh Heupel as far as coaching malpractice, especially with that last offensive drive.
Yeah.
I understand the logic of, looking at the chart and the percentages, go full on Butch Jones, Billy Napier, where you're trying to play smart football. But, in games like this, you gotta just put your foot on the gas, all 60 minutes. And really what he should have done is we should have just kept on just playing offense as we did that entire second half and try to get another score, because that actually wound up almost biting us in the ass, and we nearly lost that game because of that. My biggest takeaway, though, and we'll talk about this, I guess the next topic we can talk about is area concerns that we have and what we want to see as far as improvement goes from this bye week when we go on towards LSU next Saturday. The missed tackles, man. Holy shit. The missed tackles are absolutely absurd, especially on that first touchdown from Florida. I'm pretty sure that slot wideout went through 15 missed tackles getting the end zone. I mean, it's just
ran over Trayvon Flowers, bro. It was just crazy.
It was just abysmal. And I mean, and I feel like that just goes, like I said, it goes back down to as far as physicality and a talent perspective, where if you want to know why we're recruiting so heavily on defensive backs and defensive linemen, last Saturday is why. Because when you have a rotation of about 3 or 4 guys that are equally all good, decently, as in the rotate, there's not a big, huge difference, from your starters to your backups. And I think you saw that a lot for our defensive line, especially last Saturday when you had Joshua Josephs and, a couple other guys. I mean, those guys are straight up ballers. I mean, they're going to be huge for us within the next couple of years as well. But, man, the missed tackles from the secondary especially, I mean, my God. I feel like that's one area of improvement that we especially got to work on going towards it before we go to Baton Rouge next weekend. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on where you think we need to improve as well.
Oh, man, I feel like first off, if we would have looked at all of our problems defensively and all the gaps, and then you would have told me that, we can point all of these things out, but we have 2 weeks to fix it. I think that's, the biggest part. You get a bye week and then you get another week to do that. What I was most surprised about is that, Jeremy Banks and Jawan Mitchell playing 98% of the linebacker snaps. You didn't really see, the guy that's been, one of our best linebackers all year, Aaron Beasley. He wasn't on the field that much as I thought he would have been. Pairing him up with Solon Page, guys you were expecting to see. I thought that was wild to see. I thought that was huge for Jawan Mitchell to finally get his first big game to play that many snaps. I know he was lacking a little bit on running in with the option, but on other parts he was there playing just an important role, just as good as Banks was. So that was huge. To say that our linebackers are probably playing more sturdy than our defensive backs, I would not have thought about that. Just by a on paper kind of performance looking at things and seeing how stacked it was. The additions in the offseason. I definitely think you have to, figure out that spacing. You have to see if you're going to get a guy like D. Williams back this week that's going to be able to play a contributing part. You got to, maybe if, I think this would be the week, even though it's a really big opponent in LSU, you haven't really, mixed up and let those young guys go out there, ball out and play. See what you got, man. If you have to play, rotate more than you're used to rotating, put in a guy like Christian Charles, let him play more snaps than he's used to. If D. Williams can play on the opposite side of him, see if that can be an ongoing rotation. Brandon Turnage, man, Brandon Turnage has to get better. We haven't seen a performance from him as good since, last year's South Carolina game where he was the SEC Defensive Player of the Week. I want to see him come back and make a, important thing on here. And then Kamal Hayden, I think he needs to, continue his dominance and be a huge part because he's been, lighting fire, I think, on that position. So if those guys can have big games, I definitely think overall it's really just, the DBs. Like we talk about Rodney Garner. He finally has a grasp on his D-line, seeing Tyree West, Amari Thomas, Byron Young, and, James Pierce, Joshua Josephs, Tyler Barron. It's just been, crazy to see that kind of growth in the last year. But if our DBs, come out and make plays, get some interceptions off the ball and off speed, these receivers that we're going to play against LSU, not just Keyshawn Butte, but they're long, they're lengthy, they have speed, man. And, LSU is known as wide receiver U for most people. So it's going to be a real test.
You really, I mean, I agree with you with everything you said, but you really truly believe switching up the rotation starting next Saturday is a really good idea. That is
not completely. I'm not saying completely, but you got to get more snaps for a guy like Wesley Walker, who in that Pitt game, 4th and 13, Wesley Walker, gets the 4th down stop. He comes off the edge. He makes a great hit as a spy safety. That guy, he deserves more playing time. He was a good veteran at Georgia Tech. I definitely think that, maybe it's just, a learning curve for him right now. But that's a guy that probably should be on the field.
I mean, maybe not. But, the last thing I want, though, is, because I do believe that Christian Charles is going to wind up being a decent player for us at some point this year. But the last thing I want is, throwing that guy into the fucking fire and having to face LSU's wide receiver unit, which is probably outside of Tennessee and Alabama is the best in the league.
For sure.
And because that is going to like completely kill his confidence. And realistically, if we're going to be honest here, probably the earliest game that you're going to see a lot of those different rotations as far as like DBs go, and on even on the offensive side of the ball, it's probably going to be UT Martin, like, which is about 3 weeks from now. And I mean, the reason I say that is because like we play Alabama the week after, and you sure as hell don't want to do any different types of rotations for the Alabama game either. So it's great that we have the bye week, but also at the same time, it just sucks that we have to start off with LSU and Alabama back to back. But huge thing though is that we're 4-0.
For sure.
Huge, 8th in the country. First time we've been 8th since 2006. First time back in the top 10 since 2016. And Brando, I know you're going to like this fact right here. First time Tennessee has started 4-0 while beating 2 ranked teams. The last time we did that, 98. 98.
I literally just posted that.
Yeah. So say what you want. Are we back? I don't know. That's a possibility. Probably not, actually. But and back to what we were talking about, though, realistically, the secondary's got improved. Missed tackles got improved. Also, like you'll probably disagree with this. I also feel like our running game needs to improve as well, because I feel like it's all way too reliant on Hendon Hooker. I mean, I know that Jalen Wright and Jabari both got touchdowns as well, but like realistically, I mean, they weren't really doing that much when we were playing last weekend against Florida as far as opening up the field. I mean, they were getting 2 or 3 yards here and there, but like it was really, we're completely relying on Hendon Hooker, and they got to find a way to be able to get a better rotation. I don't know if with Dylan Sampson being back, that probably might open up things a little bit, maybe. I mean, I think LSU's defensive front seven's not necessarily the best, so it might be a good opportunity for all 3 of those running backs. But I feel like we got to improve the running game, though, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, whenever the season openers happened against Ball State, I didn't really think, going into, week 4 or 5, that it would be the concern of, the running back room. Obviously, you look everywhere where Hype would have been before. The carries he gives his running back and, the depth to 3 or 4 running backs in his system was obvious. It's happened everywhere. Of the 4th string guy at least having 35 or 40 carries for himself. I think it obviously at the point to a lack of depth. You got Jalen Wright, you got Jabari Small, you lost Tylan Evans, you got new guys like Dylan Sampson who got his feet wet against Akron, Justin Williams-Thomas. He got himself in action, but not many people think he's ready to go yet. So you got maybe 3 guys right now you can trust. Leneath Whitehead hurt early. Lynn J. Dixon gone like we never knew him. So all in all, like they tried their best to add to that, make it a more, threatening running back room. But I think that's why you saw against Pitt, the quick passes to Jalen Hyatt for him having those quick catches for, 200 yards almost. And then, not being able to get the running game going. Jabari Small and Jalen Wright, they got into the end zone, the checkerboards this week. That was really great to see. But I definitely think there's room for improvement. I'm not sure. I haven't done any research on LSU's rush defense, but I know offensively, their starting left guard, broke his hand in practice today. And that offensive line was already atrocious. So, that would be crazy. But going back to the running back room, I definitely think it's, a lack of depth. Guys are, they're getting their feet wet. And if I think the only guy on our team right now, Dylan Sampson, he has that home running hitting ability to, what we saw in Tylan Evans last year. If that happens this week against LSU, I don't know. But I definitely think he needs to make his way in this rotation. And, Jerry Mack even said after the Pittsburgh game and the Akron game that he's a guy he can put out there and trust now. It's just about getting him 100% ready. So I think that'll be, huge to see how we go forward. Just with not knowing where Cedric Tillman is at, that rush game has to be key.
Yeah, absolutely. Before people realize what's going on, if they just tuned in, we do have Bear from Fox Sports Knoxville join us in the next few minutes. Very excited, very hyped up about that. But before we talk about that, Brando, you're the guy that knows all about the recruiting nugs.
Oh, my God.
This was a massive recruiting weekend, recruiting W for Tennessee. Probably the best atmosphere of Neyland Stadium in over 20 years. Let's hear the nugs, baby. What are the recruiting nugs? What are the kids saying? What are they feeling? We got.
Oh, I mean, I think this is probably the biggest, recruiting advantage weekend, game day weekend for the kids to see since I don't even know, maybe Ole Miss last year. Just the environment that I saw, personally saw and then seeing all the reaction. I was at the Vols shop, saw Kendrick Folk, who I didn't even see on the recruiting list, the 4-star defensive lineman committed to Florida State right now that Tennessee's been heavily after. The Rodney Gardner effect, he was in town. on an unofficial. The two official visitors for the 2023 class, 4-star offensive lineman Bison Lang out of Alabama. That's a huge 4-star prospect that Tennessee's after heavily. After his visit to Tennessee, he had a couple of TikToks, was taking in the environment, said it was one of the best environments he's ever seen. He received crystal balls from Steve Wiltfong and Ryan Callahan on 24/7 Sports. So that would be a huge addition to the offensive lineman class with Sham Uvarov and Aiden Bussell. Talk about adding to that offensive line. It's definitely a much needed thing with Darnell Wright maybe leaving this year, Jerome Carvin maybe leaving this year, and, not knowing what, Cooper Mays is going to do himself. So, offensive line, definitely a huge part. On the defensive lineman, 5-star defensive lineman David Hobbs had his first official visit with Tennessee. He was absolutely blown away. I don't know if y'all saw, but when Kamal Hayden, he had that game-winning interception, he went and took that ball into the end zone, and right behind him was David Hobbs waving his, Tennessee pom-pom, was going crazy, taking in the environment. He absolutely loved it. The North Carolina native, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia battle right now. When you hear about, being involved with those teams, a definitely big, important recruit. You want to win those battles against those teams. I think Tennessee's in a great spot there. Sounds like he's going to be back for the Alabama game in 3 weeks. So that'll be a huge environment, battling Alabama for his recruitment. He saw the environment for the first time himself. So getting him back, that's going to be huge. Besides those three guys, defensively and going forward, looking in the future, 2024 class, it was an absolute crazy weekend probably for that guy. You had a lot of recruits in there, Mario Craver, just a crazy amount of lists. And I think this 2024 class is going to look like a top 5 class. It's just absolutely insane. It sounds like, Mario Craver, the 2024 wide receiver, top 25 receiver ranked in the 2024 class. He received a crystal ball from an OU insider who was, an OU, Alabama, and Tennessee race. And he has a countdown on his story for this Friday, I believe. So decision could be coming soon after a good crystal ball for the Vols. If Tennessee can land a 2024 wide receiver without having, you got Jonathan Nichols, you got Carson Gentle in that class right now. Jonathan Nichols is going to be, a top 5 tight end in that class. You add to the wide receiver room, that's just more weapons coming in for Nico. That's, going to be in Nico's sophomore year. So it's looking really crazy. That was a huge weekend for Florida. I think, that win can definitely get you back involved with some guys in the 2023 class that, you might not be involved with. And the rumors are already making their way around that, for the Alabama game, that Nico's going to be back in town and he's going to be bringing some friends, Drew. Have you heard the rumor?
That's the first time I've heard it. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So it sounds like Nico is going to be in town on the Bama game with a 5-star offensive lineman, Francis Malgoa. So that would be a huge, huge visit. The Miami commit, Tennessee was heavily involved there. If Tennessee can get back in there, I saw, in Francis' recent Instagram post, he was throwing around some orange emojis, man, some oranges. So it sounds like, I wouldn't want to go play at Miami either. I don't know if y'all saw the videos and the pictures online, but, one, they lost to MTSU, and 2, in the first quarter, their arena was literally empty. Their home sideline had no one in there. And in that same week, Tennessee had 101,915 packed out in orange and white. So I just definitely think that this win was huge all in all for recruiting. A lot of guys that, weren't giving you a serious look, get back on that cell phone. Josh Heupel will say, look at me now, look what I just did. And that's going to be huge going forward. Obviously, you got to handle business with LSU, Bama, Georgia, compete there. But, we started off, at Skyblocks Bar and Grill, #ad. And, our season predictions, 9-3, 8-4. Drew, 10-2 doesn't sound too crazy now. And if you do that, not only does it help you on the field and get into a bowl game with the program itself, but recruiting, you want to talk about kickstarting recruiting? That's how you do it.
I completely agree with that. I would honestly argue right now, even though I predicted 9-3, and I think a lot of us would have been thrilled about a 9-3 record back in August, but for sure. I would actually argue right now that 10-2 is the floor. I think that's actually the bare minimum that we're going to do. Because, there's a lot of things that we have to improve on. These are things that can be worked on and can be fixed. We know that our defense isn't going to be amazing. But we also know that no one's going to be able to stop our offense. And I think a huge thing as well is that Georgia doesn't look unbeatable anymore, especially after how they played against Kent State. They allowed 22 points to Kent fucking State.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't even tell you what Kent State is. But I think honestly, with like as much depth and talent that we have on offense, like I mean, 10-2 is not crazy. And if you go 10-2, you're talking about a New Year's Six bowl, whether if it's going to be a Sugar Bowl. I've seen predictions with the Orange Bowl,
Yeah.
potentially maybe with Clemson, which I think would be huge, and I quite personally think would beat the living hell out of Clemson.
Mhm.
And that is massive recruits, especially considering that we went from back in 2 years ago to have 27, 28 players in the portal, 3-7 record, and you turn around and you take Tennessee to their first New Year's Six Bowl or first Orange Bowl in 25 years or first Sugar Bowl in 30. And with that offense, what offensive player would not want to be part of that? I mean, honestly. I mean, especially after last weekend, what wide receiver
He's literally
would not want to be part of that? So just, I mean, these are unbelievable times. I mean, I've never thought in a million years that Heupel would be able to turn around as fast as he did. But, man, dude's unbelievable.
Bro, so you mentioned like, the departures like that, but this year, Tennessee finally wrapping up the NCAA investigation, putting that in their past. Last year, all the additions that they had, they were kind of, like playing chess with what you could do in the transfer portal. This year, now that we mentioned it and, on the field and what we've done on the field and other guys in the nation taking notice where all these coaches are, getting, fired and all that in SEC, or whatever. Like, I definitely think you see Tennessee this year raid that transfer portal action or that JUCO action, not miss out like they did last year. They definitely, get people that they could have, definitely landed just because of what they're putting out on the field. And that blueprint is definitely insane because, you used to just be able to be like, oh, I'm going to bring this, where I was at, Missouri and UCF. Now you're doing it at Tennessee, and, they're going to take notice playing the SEC and seeing that environment. You got old Lane Kiffin over there talking about how he can't fill up a stadium for a top 25 matchup. Well, you got 101, 915 showing up every week now. So I just think that's a huge, huge thing too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. Like I said, told you guys after the game, that was one of the best, probably the best atmosphere I've ever been a part of. I think it was personally better even than the Ole Miss game last year, as crazy as that one was. It was everything about it was just unreal. I've never heard it so loud in my life.
Oh, man. And I just, we talk about that being a huge, huge momentum swing. Like, if we go out there in the Baton Rouge and take care of business at a late 11 a.m. kickoff, we haven't talked about that. Getting that lucky, getting that, noon kickoff, that's huge. Never want to play nighttime in Baton Rouge. If you win that game, you're coming in for a potentially, we talked about in the chat, a top 5, top 10 matchup, definitely between Bama and Tennessee for the first time, in how long. So I just, the ticket prices are already up to, $1,200 for lower levels. I think it's, it's getting ridiculous in Knoxville.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember back a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, you'd be able to get a ticket for like the South Carolina game for $15, per day, begging you to be up there. And now, cheapest ticket, even for the Kentucky game now, is $180 on Ticketmaster. It's unbelievable. It's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah, UT Martin. I was trying to buy tickets to that game. I'm like, maybe the out of conference game, that'll be a good game to go to. Take the fam to. Lower levels are already at $85 plus after taxes, $100 each. So just crazy.
Yeah,
man. But that's what shows you where the program is, man. How healthy it is. Maybe not as us as fans trying to scalp each other, but it's because of the product on the field and what's good. The healthy environment. So that's just all good news.
Do we got Bear here? Is he almost?
Yeah, he's in here.
All right, let's get him in here.
You want to do the introduction, my fellow man, Drew?
All right, so got one of my favorite people, the guy that kind of started the legend himself, my mentor from a good old fan run, Fox Sports Knoxville. Bear, what's happening, buddy? What's going on?
What's happening, fellas?
Oh, dude, we were just reminiscing and recapping from last Saturday. As you know, first win over the Gators, and since 2016, second win over them since 2004. Unbelievable atmosphere, unbelievable game. Just kind of want to get your thoughts on Vols finally getting that monkey off their back against Florida and being 4-0 for the first time since 2016.
It's something else, and I mean, I'm quite a bit older than you guys, and I mean, I've had let's see, in my life, I mean, the three in the 90s, and now 3 in the 2000s. So you're talking like 6 times out of my lifetime that I can remember. We've never had a whole lot of sustained, consistent success against them. we didn't play them for a good chunk of it, but you know, it was an incredible weekend, an incredible game, and for a lot of the old heads, you know, we all noticed that we beat Florida this time in a lot of the same ways that Spurrier used to beat Tennessee back in the 90s. We talked about it on our daily show on the drive this week. Just Heupel dictates the terms to the opposing team. You know, I think that's why you saw Napier go just absolutely full throttle, which I thought was at times reckless, and a couple of moments where he may have cost himself a shot at pulling the upset on us. So,
for sure.
But just with you know, there's only really two teams on our schedule that, you know, going into it, they've got the horses, so to speak, and the players to slow us down on offense. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's been a long, long time since I've seen a Tennessee offense that is just this overpowering. So that was my initial thought. It was just trying to figure out, is Florida's defense that bad? Is our offense that good? Is it somewhere in the middle?
I think it might be like a little bit of a mixture of the two. I mean, I didn't think Florida's defense was necessarily that bad, but man, when you have like the depth that we do at wide receiver, and I mean, just as fast as it is, I mean, even for teams last year, like even against Alabama, they were struggling to stay with us. So I think, I mean, it's like what I told Brando. I think this is the best Tennessee offense I've seen in my lifetime, at least in my 24 years, which obviously isn't saying much. But Hendon Hooker might be the best quarterback I've ever seen in my lifetime as well. I mean, that guy was the sole reason that we won last Saturday and has every right to be in the Heisman contention right now.
Well, the other thing that, and I don't think a lot of people understand, it's not. I mean, Hendon's an incredible talent. If he continues on this way, I mean, it's not going to be any shock at all. If I don't think that he's going to be able to win it. I haven't recognized the trophy since '97, since they cheated Peyton out of it, but he's probably going to get invited to New York, barring something unforeseen. But you know, this offense we run in the Heupel offense, they run a ton of what's called option routes. But to be able to pull that off, not only, you know, you've got the receivers making their read, and then Hooker has to make the same read, and everybody has to be on the same page for this thing to work. And, you know, when it's working as well as it is right now for us, they're in a groove. The last time we had that level of communication between the quarterback and the receivers at all times, you'd have to go back to Peyton, and like Peyton and Joey Kent, Marcus Nash, that bunch, where when they stepped up to the line, they could take a look at the defense, look at each other, and with very little signals at all, they knew exactly where to attack, and then did it. So it's a lot of fun to watch.
I think it's crazy how like quick they've adapted. You know, I know it's going into year 2, but just seeing how they've done it. Alex Golish, I thought he called a crazy good of a game. You know, I know Heupel has the final input, but Alex Golish, I thought he's been a crazy addition. I know this offseason teams are going to be after him like they were last year. And then pointing back, I know we don't want to recognize, you know, the Heisman Trophy after how they did Peyton, but, you know, going forward, if Hendon even is invited, not only does that help, you know, guys coming in like Nico, but, you know, the 2024 class going after guys like Jaden Daniels, Drew McIntyre. I know, you know, looking forward but kids are going to take notice of that, you know, modern day, you know, pointing back to the Florida comment, you know, I've only known 2016 and now 2022 for the times winning those games, but winning a game like we did Saturday, the kids in the future, I know it was only a few 2023s, but 2024, 2025 and going on, I think that's a monumental win on the recruiting trail for the guys. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts on Bears. You've obviously experienced a lot of unbelievable atmospheres in Neyland Stadium, even way back in the days, Johnny Majors, especially in the glorious 90 years as well. Where do you think that atmosphere on Saturday, as far as watching it, I don't know if you were there at the game or not, but even just watching from TV, where do you think that ranks up as far as the Here's in Neyland Stadium?
I mean, it's up there. There's no better looking setting. I mean, just incredible. The color and just everything with the checker Neyland and how everything looks in there now. I've been in there for some games. The problem is, and it's again something that we've, people around town have noticed is with the addition of that club section right there, and was it like section R and S up there on the west side of the stadium? That's dropped the overall volume level in there. So, I mean, the games that I've been to, anybody that was there, the two biggest nights I didn't get to go to the 98 game. I watched that one on TV, so I can't speak to that. But the 90 win over Florida was an insane night in there. But for me, the most insane game I ever went to at Neyland Stadium was the 92 Florida game. There was a freak thunderstorm over the stadium. I believe late in the third quarter, early in the fourth. We had the monsoon. You can go back. You can look up the game on YouTube. There's a point when we started rolling on them in '92 where the picture on TV. I mean, you can't see the field because the stadium's shaking so bad that the cameras were shaking. So that's the loudest I've ever seen it.
Right.
Just insane. But yeah, I mean, it's a huge advantage. I heard you guys talking about Lane Kiffin, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I read the article, and it's not that he can't fill a stadium. It's that down there, the fans, you've got the Grove, and I think they said some bar and something else. So they straggle into the stadium, and then they leave at halftime to go party more, and then they don't come back. Whereas at Tennessee, I mean, the whole focus of being there is the game.
Yeah.
It's not the party or anything else going on. So, and that's the difference between Ole Miss and Tennessee.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I think a lot of people already knew in the first place that we had a better fan base as far as consistency and filling up the stadium. Because, hell, we fill up the stadium for damn Derek Dooley and Jeremy Pruitt and Butch Jones. So, but just to be able to consistently, again, get 100,000 in there. Not even just for Florida, but like even Akron. You're talking about even tickets in now, Alabama games for deck. Kentucky's now $200. Even UT Martin's get up to $100 a ticket. It's just, I've never experienced anything like this in my lifetime, and it's unbelievable. And the turnaround that Josh Heupel's had is just, it's just been nothing but short of amazing. What was one takeaway for you? We were talking about this, little areas of concern. Obviously, a huge bye week for us. Big game next weekend against LSU. What is the one area of concern you think obviously Tennessee needs to work and improve on, whether it was the missed tackles, the fourth down defense, third down defense?
I guess the biggest concern for me, before we get into some, like the play, like problems with the defense and stuff. The bye week came at a great time. I think Hooker came out of that game probably extremely sore, borderline hurt. He took that one big hit with that 350 pounder coming down on him. My biggest concern is we're starting to get a little dinged up. We're hitting that portion of the season. We get Tillman out. He may or may not have had that that procedure where they go in and take some kind of surgical cord and pull the two bones together, and it's got like a 2-week recovery period. We need Dylan Sampson. He obviously didn't play Saturday. We really need him healthy because we're getting into the part of the schedule where LSU, Georgia, and Alabama coming up, and these guys. We saw it last year with Georgia. Javonte had the big touchdown, and then you saw it. It was like the next series they had him out. Completely clean. These guys, Alabama, dirty, and one of the most physical football teams in the country. Georgia, incredibly physical. So, I mean, as far as the team goes, I mean, it's pretty obvious to everybody that we don't have the most talented secondary. So it's going to come down to whether or not Banks and Heupel can scheme and do enough to keep us in games to where the offense can have a shot at outscoring the other team. I think it's going to be incredibly hard against Alabama and Georgia to pull it off.
Yeah.
LSU and Kentucky are the two where those are going to be the two swing games between 8-4 and 10-2.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree there. With the running game, it has to find its identity. I know the lack of depth is kind of concerning. I know Tennessee put out that graphic earlier this week. I think it was number 1 in the nation, total offense per game, number 2 in the nation for passing yards in the game. So, that kind of, points to what Hendon Hooker's done on the field, but obviously our lack of running backs. Dylan Sampson being banged up, I definitely want to see him, get touches against LSU, not just because he's from Baton Rouge, but I feel like he's kind of that guy on this roster that I heard Bear kind of say on the drive today. He has that home run hit ability, or at least I think so, with his speed. I know he's up there with Squirrel Wright right now, was like one of the fastest players on the team. So if we can see that guy get involved in the backfield, I know, Justin Williams-Thomas, he's not really kind of ready yet, but if we can get that going, that would be huge. Cedric Tillman, they said, they're kind of hopeful to see him play. That would be huge for the wide receiver room. But if they don't think so, I would rather kind of keep him just for Bama. I feel like we saw enough this week against Florida that I think Ventrell Miller was definitely noticeable. That Florida defense is really good. And I think to see our guys go out there and our receivers run free like they did, yeah, it was a lot of miscommunication, but Brew McCoy, Ramel Keaton, Jalen Hyatt, I think we'd be fine with those guys. But it starts with the running game. And I think I'm going to agree with the guys at Fan Run and everyone else kind of speaking. Do we miss Warren Burrell right now on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, I think the answer to everybody's question from a few weeks ago is, why do they keep starting Warren Burrell? I think we all know now why they kept starting Warren Burrell, because, as bad as Warren played at times, it was pretty obvious Saturday we were lost at times back there. So, but as far as like Dylan Sampson, Squirrel White, and those, you mentioned those guys, hopefully they'll be, I'm not sure if those guys are going to be ready to step up this year in the two biggest games, which are Georgia and Alabama, but you're going to have your guys, your speed guys on the team ready to make big time plays to keep you in games against the Georgias and Alabamas. So, because those Alabama and Georgia, they have speed all over the field, and you're not going to. You might see a bust. We saw it last year with Alabama on a couple of plays, but Georgia specifically has so much speed that they can recover. If they have a bust, they can recover in time to make a play on the ball. So,
yeah, I mean, I think as well, like, especially against like Georgia, like, you're not going to be able just to outscore them. Like, you just can't. I mean, like, we still don't necessarily even have the depth yet as far as the offensive line goes to be able to compete with them in that sense. But the secondary's got to improve in the sense that they got to be able to get the opposition off the field. And I think they might have a better shot with Alabama, just because I haven't really necessarily been that impressed by their offense. And I just feel like Georgia's been more of a click as far as just as far as how fast that they play, and their offense has gone compared to Alabama. But I mean, out of the two, Bear, which game? And I mean, it's probably going to be an obvious answer, but do you think we have a better shot of winding up beating Alabama or beating Georgia this year?
I mean, we talked about this and debated it. Probably Bama, as crazy as that sounds. I just think that Georgia's, that much better on. I mean, it's 6-1, half a dozen of another. Alabama's a really well-coached yet hard-hitting, borderline dirty, if not one of the dirtiest, defenses, nastiest defenses to play against. I mean, you saw it in that Texas game. I mean, that was a thing of beauty, but he took Quinn Ewers out. So it's something that, Hooker's going to have to be aware of. I mean, he should be. He had 4 teeth knocked out against him last year. But at the end of the, but then you get into the whole, obviously Alabama's quarterback play with Young is just light years beyond what Stetson Bennett can do, but Young isn't surrounded with as good a talent as he's had the first couple of years. So, I mean, either one. I mean, it's a tough ask. You know, we were talking today. I feel like our goal should be to get to 10-2 this year. I'm telling you right now, that Kentucky game is not going to be easy. They play really, really good defense. They're very disciplined. You saw that in the Florida game. We kind of tried to do what Kentucky did. It's just our defense is not definitely on the back end is nowhere near as disciplined or as talented. So I mean, don't count them out. I mean, we got 4 really rough games that are going to decide whether we go, like I said, 10-2 or 8-4.
I think it's really crazy how Kentucky plays their competition. We saw this week with Northern Illinois, like that game was, a 1-score game in the final. Earlier in the year, Miami, Ohio, and I forgot, was Youngstown State or something. They played really close. Like there were a few catches from making that game a 1-score game. And, just seeing them play to their level of competition, they're going to go out there. They beat Florida. They're going to play us tough, obviously, when they come to Neyland. But I definitely think that's a game that's, winnable. Going back to the Bama game, which one's going to be more winnable with Bama and Georgia? I just think that right now with what Georgia, with their tight ends, I think we saw Bama kind of get exposed with the Texas game. I saw a crazy stat, and it said Alabama's last 5 true road games: a 1-point win against Texas, a 2-point win at Auburn, a 40-point win at Mississippi State, a 3-point loss at Texas A&M, and a 2-point win at Florida. So I know a lot of it, with their defense is, not as crazy good as it has been defensive back-wise. This year, not really, crazy stacked at wide receiver. Kind of seeing Bryce Young kind of get tested. If that happens, coming to Neyland, if we take care of business against LSU, I promise you that place is going to be just sold out like it was this past weekend. And I can promise you that place is going to be loud too. So I just can't imagine if we can play them close. We saw it last year when we went down there and played them close and just, lost it in the fourth quarter because of depth. If we can, get that punch early and you go up early, the team has lacked in the first quarter earlier this year, but, going into the second quarter, third quarter, we saw this past week, that 99-yard drive, like we're, getting points when it matters. So I just think that we might have a chance to compete.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about it is if you're going to have a shot at beating either one of those two teams, you have to play all 4. You saw it last year. We hung with Alabama, went toe-to-toe with them, punch for punch. And then we ran out of gas in the fourth quarter. The next thing you know, they beat you by 28. So same thing with Georgia. We're going to have to score. You got to get points almost every possession, to even have a chance to be in the game at the end. So, but all that being said, this is just incredibly fun, isn't it? Here at 4-0.
Bear, I remember 2 years ago when you and I think it was the Monday after the Kentucky game. I think that was probably an all-time low as far as Vol fans, going 34-7, losing them at home, getting whooped like a redheaded stepchild, just absolute massacre. And I mean, even struggling to Arkansas at home and things like this, and now to be a top 10 team, actually think about not, being a fairy tale land, but actually realistically talking about a 10-2 record and potentially playing a New Year's Six ball. It's unbelievable. I mean, this must have been what it was like, during the Johnny Majors and Philip Fulmer era, because this is awesome. So I can definitely understand.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's getting uncharted territory. There's nothing better than New Orleans on New Year's. The last time we played in the Sugar Bowl, I was, a sophomore at UT? Was that freshman or sophomore year, 90, the 90 Sugar Bowl?
Mm-hmm.
I can't. That's how long it's been. I can't remember exactly which year it was, but 1991. But it was. I mean, it's incredible. It's so much fun, and to think that we've got a shot at getting there. We had a shot to get there in 16. And they stumbled going, down the stretch, losing South Carolina, losing to Vanderbilt. And you don't get many shots at this. So I'm just hoping for mainly for the guys and for the coaches. They put in so much hard work. You want to see them succeed as far as they, as good as they can, just because it's a reward. So, but yeah, it's an incredible feeling as the fan.
I'll say, if you would have told me after LSU won their national championship was probably one of the best teams in college football, that in 2 years Tennessee would be the number 8 team, Jeremy Pruitt would be fired, we'd have one of the probably best offensive-minded coaches in all of college football, and we'd be going into Death Valley 4-0, beating Florida in year 2 under the new coach. Like, I'd be calling you, like, saying, like, that's the guy. That's going to be like our guy that's going to, be able to lead this program in the right direction. And not only doing that, but how we talked about before Bear joined, losing 27 plus guys. All guys who just left the program and didn't buy in, already at a disadvantage, seeing how we're going on the recruiting trail and doing so little less, and the lack of depth in the defensive back. Like, we're, a top 100 defense, it can definitely be better, but our offense is so good that it's out there winning us games. And that's just a huge part. But I would have never believed that we'd be, this far and talking about competing, in those big games, not only the games, but on the recruiting trail where it matters too. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, as much negative recruiting as was going on, all the attrition that we had from the team, I contended earlier in the week on our show that I think that the talent drain was more pronounced on the defensive side of the ball. And we lost Toto, we lost Key Lawrence, Quavaris Crouch,
Eric Gray,
J.J. Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and the Peterson flop, that whole deal, the NCAA investigation, just everything. And it's really, if you take a step back and look at it, it's pretty wild how successful Heupel and his whole staff and the team have been. So it's a testament to their hard work. And I guess finally having a coach, and I think it was Drew that just said, having the coach, we've got the coach who runs the most cutting edge dynamic offense.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just an incredible play caller. So,
I mean, and that's the thing as well. Like, it just, we've had Butch Jones that started off hot in a couple of years, like with, in 2016 and things like that. But you always kind of had that feeling where like it was like too good to be true. It genuinely feels like there's something about this team and just about this coaching staff where I don't know if you would agree with this with you or not, Bear, but like you genuinely believe that this team can make it to the Sugar Bowl, that they can make a New Year's Six Bowl, and that they're even going to get better from there on. There's that bright future where like we've proven on the field and off the field, obviously, that like we can be back where we belong.
Yeah, and I think part of that is that every time Butch had an opportunity and those guys had an opportunity to exceed expectations, it's not that they didn't meet expectations. They had a really bad habit of never being able to exceed expectations. In the short amount of time Coach Heupel has been here, in 18 months, we've exceeded expectations, several different times. And specifically this year, definitely Pitt, and being able to win Pitt and Florida. We were hoping we could get to 4-0, but I think we all felt like at 3-1, we wouldn't complain too much. But now that we're here, I mean, at 4-0, it's just incredible.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, though. I mean, like 2 years ago, I mean, with those close games that we had with Pitt, and especially the near fourth quarter collapse that we had, or the last 2 minutes collapse we had against Florida, like you would have thought, like, typical Tennessee and everything like that. But like it finally, I mean, hell, it even feels like our luck is turning. I mean, we got LSU's playing an 11 a.m. kickoff us next Saturday. Like this would have never happened 3 or 4 years ago. I mean,
and it like kind of sucks for fans and bars and businesses and stuff. But as far as it's really kind of a huge break for us, something that I know Russ has said it a lot of the former players that he's interviewed over the years. And, I'm sure T-Fair and everything, those guys will always tell you the worst thing to do is to have to sit around at the hotel all day waiting on the game. If you're on the road, they'd rather go ahead, get to the stadium and get started and get play the game. So it's a pretty big advantage for us this, coming up next weekend. Another big test.
Huge test. I mean, hopefully be able to get revenge from that whole entire 2010 debacle.
Oh man.
Going all the way back to 2001 when they started, they kind of tripped us and shoved us down the hill in mediocrity down there in Atlanta. So
yeah,
it would be nice to return the favor and not do anything to help Brian Kelly get any traction coming into the league his first year. So
I don't think he's going to be going away at LSU anytime soon, regardless of results, especially with that buyout.
Oh no, he's recruiting. His first class he's got coming in next year is unreal. So he's going to be a problem for everybody. But that's why it's important this first year to, get Napier and get Kelly and get these guys while in their first year. And kind of get up on them a little bit, and then you have that mental edge, down the road. So, anyhow,
I think it was somewhere on Twitter they said, Heupel has us out there practicing at 7 a.m. and LSU's practice I think is around 4 p.m., 3 p.m. our time. So, it's just if that does transfer in, obviously the fans, nighttime Baton Rouge versus daytime 11 a.m. kickoff. That's going to be a huge difference in itself. Obviously bad for business, but I think it'll have our guys ready to go. We saw last year. The two games that we exploded most, I think, were South Carolina and Missouri, and those were early kickoffs. So if they come out there ready to go, if we could even see some kind of resilience to that, I don't think Jaden Daniels is all that. I think if you get pressure on him, he's kind of already banged up. And then what does LSU do? If we can, transfer it kind of to that Pitt vibe, how we took off Slovis and Patty, I think that would be a huge thing. But you still got to worry about LSU's receivers. They're skill players, even though they're kind of, just getting started and Brian Kelly's era, like Kayshon Boutte is still there. They got a dynamic quarterback. And, if we can take that guy out, that's a huge step and stuff for that game.
Yeah. I mean, we need to treat it a lot like Pitt. We need to, plan on, we need to get a hold of their quarterback. We need to rough him up early. Even when we don't sack him, we need to get there and put him on the ground. And we need to play real physical against LSU and then just impose our will on them offensively. So it'll be a really interesting game to watch. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the last 3 weeks now for Akron, Florida, and now going into LSU, we'll see, dual threat quarterbacks. But at least this week compared to last week, this guy isn't built like a linebacker. I think if you put pressure on Jaden Daniels and you get to him, if Byron Young and Tyler Barron can get back there and get hits early, it's going to, only take a few if he's already banged up probably. They already lost their starting left guard. The offensive line has already kind of been mediocre. If Tennessee can get, hot on the defense, that would be a huge game for the defense to come alive and prove that, hey, we can compete with our offense and go out there and win a game too. And I think it starts there.
That's about it. I mean, it's just it, it's the next challenge. And, I know it's cliched, but we, at this point, we just got to take it one game at a time and 1 week at a time. And, I really think that hopefully we can stay healthy and continue to play well on offense and shore up some of our problems on defense. And this team's got a really good shot at having a really special year. So, and for the bunch that stuck around, I guess in closing for me, I wish them all the luck in the world. This is a special group, the guys that stuck around and didn't bolt. When a lot of their teammates and friends were, it just does something to their character. So,
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think you said it perfectly. It's a special time on Rocky Top. I never thought I would have said that, especially when we hired the man back in January of 2021 to be a top 10 team. High hopes and going on the road against LSU, even potentially even getting maybe an upset against Alabama. Brando, Bear, any last thoughts, any last concerns, anything like this?
I'll just add to that, I guess, going into week 4, if you would have told me week 2 going into week 4 or 5 that we'd be, 4-0, beat Florida, be, one of the 21 teams still undefeated and the only team in that 21 to have 2 top 25 ranked wins. I think it's an impressive resume to go out there after last year, start off hot. Obviously, we'll see what happens against LSU, but I think this week it's kind of been a celebratory week of, talking about it, but now actually being about it, getting that win and trying to change for the future. And if we can go out there and continue this path, like Bear said, actually taking it week by week now and not just being cliche. You know, we can go out there and win games, and we'll just see how it happens, man. I think this team is definitely special. We have a great offense, a great quarterback, and I think the defense is coming soon. So obviously a bye week episode, not crazy much, but still a lot to unpack, and it was cool.
Well, good deal. I mean, that's about all I've got. My voice is about shot after the day's show. Just been a great season. So I appreciate you guys having me on, though.
Of course.
For sure.
Absolutely.
All right. I look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
Yes, sir. Yeah, good one.
Thank you, Bear. Drew,
Brando,
the show.
Always a pleasure. Next week, we'll get won't say who, won't say where, but we'll get a nice little special guest for everyone next week. So,
Lots unpacked.
Hyped up about this big LSU game, and a lot of people forget we're less than 5 weeks away from Tennessee basketball as well. So, Vols basketball is just right around the corner, as crazy as it seems to believe. So, we'll definitely have to talk a little hype about that as well very soon for sure. Brando.
Back next Wednesday. Yeah, back next Wednesday. Full crew. Looking forward to the LSU game. Obviously, Lo and Alex not here. Prayers to all our listeners in Florida. You know, people from Florida in general battling this hurricane. Thoughts and prayers out there. Be back next Wednesday. Huge to unpack. Until then, go Vols, and we'll see you next week.
Go Vols.